The first time Adaeze tasted her own blood, she was 7 years old, and the village children had pushed her into a thorn bush for sport. "Stay away from us, shadow girl," they screamed, their voices sharp as the thorns piercing her skin. "Your darkness will curse us all." Now, 15 harvests later, nothing had changed, except the pain had learned to live inside her. Adaeze knelt by the river, scrubbing clothes that didn't belong to her. Her hands, dark and strong, moved in rhythm while her mind wandered to places where she was loved. Places that didn't exist. "Move aside, cursed one," Chioma's voice sliced through the morning air. 3 women stood behind her, their lighter skin gleaming with palm oil and pride. "The chief's daughter shouldn't have to breathe the same air as you." Adaeze shifted to the side without a word. Speaking only made it worse. "Look at her," Chioma continued, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Even her silence is dark and heavy. My mother says when Adaeze was born, the moon hid for 3 days. 3 days. The gods themselves were ashamed." Laughter erupted around them, sharp, cutting, familiar. Adaeze's chest tightened, but her face remained still as stone. She had learnt long ago that tears were luxuries she couldn't afford. They would only drink them like sweet wine and ask for more. "They say her mother died of shame," another woman whispered, not quietly enough. "Couldn't bear to look at what she brought into this world." The words found their mark. Adaeze's hands stilled in the water. Her mother hadn't died of shame. She died bringing Adaeze into a world that would reject her. The midwife had said it was a difficult birth, but the village preferred their version of the story, one where darkness was always the villain. "Are you deaf as well as cursed?" Chioma kicked water toward her. "I said move further away. Your shadow is touching my clothes." Adaeze gathered her half-washed garments and moved downstream, where the water ran slower and dirtier, where girls like her belonged according to Ukari village. But as she walked away, she heard it, that word that followed her everywhere, whispered like a prayer against evil. Abomination. She squeezed the cloth in her hands until her knuckles ached. The pain was good. It reminded her she was still human, still alive, still here despite everything. What they didn't know, what they couldn't see beyond their cruelty, was that Adaeze carried something more powerful than their hatred. Her grandmother's voice lived in her memory, clear as morning bells. "Child of the deep earth, they will mock what they fear, but when darkness falls, only you will know how to find the light." Adaeze hadn't understood those words then, but she would very soon. The drums began at dawn, shaking the very earth beneath Ukari village. Boom, boom, boom. "The prince is coming! Prince Obi is coming!" Adaeze looked up from the yam she was peeling, her heart doing something strange in her chest. She had never seen royalty before. No one in Ukari had. Their small village, tucked between the hills and the great forest, was too insignificant for royal visits. But the regional governor had died, and Prince Obi was touring every village in the land to choose a new one. Today, Ukari would host the prince himself. The entire village had transformed overnight. Palm fronds decorated every hut. The village square had been swept until the red earth gleamed. Women wore their finest wrappers, and men had painted their faces with white chalk and camwood. "You," Chief Eze's youngest wife pointed at Adaeze, "go to the back of the crowd. Better yet, stay in your hut. We don't want the prince to see you." The words landed like stones, but Adaeze nodded. She was used to being hidden, like a dirty secret the village kept. But curiosity was a powerful thing. As the royal procession entered the village, warriors with gleaming spears, drummers with talking drums, dancers in masks and feathers, Adaeze watched from behind her grandmother's old hut, hidden but present. Then she saw him, Prince Obi. He was tall, with skin like polished bronze and eyes that seemed to see everything. But it wasn't his appearance that struck her. It was the way he moved, with authority, yes, but also with something else. Weariness, perhaps, or sadness hidden behind a royal smile. The entire village elders prostrated themselves. Chief Eze presented gifts, kola nuts, palm wine, a goat, woven baskets. "Great Prince," Chief Eze declared, his voice booming with false warmth. "Ukari village is honored beyond measure. We are your loyal servants, forever faithful to the kingdom." Adaze watched the prince's face. For a flicker of a moment, something passed across it. Doubt? Disbelief? But then the royal mask returned, and he nodded graciously. The celebration began. Drums pounded, dancers swelled, and the village's best food was brought out on wide wooden trays. The prince sat under a decorated canopy, surrounded by elders who smiled too widely and spoke too loudly. Adaze should have left, should have returned to her lonely hut and let the village have its moment of glory. But something held her there, hidden in the shadows. Something her grandmother's voice whispered in her spirit. "Watch carefully, child. Darkness sees what light cannot." And then it happened. The prince lifted the calabash of palm wine to his lips. Before he could drink, Adaze saw it. A thin, oily shimmer on the surface. A shimmer that didn't belong. Her grandmother had taught her about plants, about healing, about poisons. That shimmer was death. "No!" The word tore from her throat before she could stop it. But the noise of celebration swallowed her voice. The drums were too loud, the singing too joyful. No one heard her. No one except the prince, who paused, the calabash inches from his mouth, and looked directly at where she hid. Their eyes met across the distance. And then he drank. What happens next will leave you speechless. If you want to see how this story unfolds, subscribe now so you don't miss a single moment.
The poison walked slowly, like a snake tightening around its prey. At first, no one noticed. The prince continued smiling, continued nodding as Chief Eze droned on about the village's loyalty and prosperity. The dancers span faster, their ankle bells ringing like warnings no one heeded. Then Prince Obi's hand trembled. The calabash slipped from his fingers and shattered on the ground, palm wine spreading across the red earth like spilled blood. "My prince!" His personal guard stepped forward. Prince Obi opened his mouth to speak, but instead of words, he gasped. His eyes went wide, his hands clutched at his throat, and his body convulsed once, twice, before he collapsed from his seat. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then chaos exploded. The prince has fallen! Poison! Someone has poisoned the prince!" Screams erupted from every direction. The royal guards surrounded their fallen prince, spears pointed outward at invisible enemies. Women wailed. Men shouted accusations. Chief Eze fell to his knees, his face drained of all color. Adaze pressed herself against the hot wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had tried to warn them. She had seen the poison. But would anyone believe her now? Would they blame her instead? "Bring the healers! Quickly!" The captain of the guard's voice cut through the panic. The village healers rushed forward, 3 old men who claimed to know the ways of medicine and spirits. They surrounded the prince, who was now foaming at the mouth, his body jerking violently. Adaze watched from her hiding place as they walked. They burned herbs and chanted prayers. They cut small marks in his skin and applied dark pastes. They poured bitter liquids between his lips. Nothing worked. The prince's convulsions grew worse. His skin began to darken, not with the beautiful darkness of Adaze's skin, but with the grey shadow of approaching death. "It's the poison of the king cobra plant," one healer declared, his voice shaking. "Mixed with something else, something I don't recognize." "Can you cure him?" the captain demanded, his hand on his sword. The healer's silence was answer enough. "If the prince dies here," the captain said, his voice deadly quiet, This entire village dies with him. Every man, woman, and child. That is the law. Terror rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Women clutched their children. Men looked at each other with wild eyes. Chief Eze fell to his knees. "We didn't do this. We are loyal. We would never." "Someone did," the captain interrupted. "And if we cannot save him, it won't matter who." Adaze's hands were shaking. She knew what the poison was. Her grandmother had shown her the king cobra plant, taught her its evil nature, and taught her the antidote. But no one would listen to her. She was Adaze, the cursed one, the shadow girl, the abomination. If she stepped forward now, they would blame her for the poisoning itself. They would kill her before she could even speak. "We must send for the royal physician," one of the elders suggested. "He's 3 days' journey away. The prince has 3 hours, perhaps less." 3 hours. Adaze watched as they tried everything. More chants, more herbs, more prayers to gods who seemed deaf to their pleas. The prince's breathing grew shallower. His convulsions slowed, not because he was recovering, but because death was settling over him like a blanket. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. "I can help." Adaze's voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper. No one heard her. "I said I can help," louder this time. A few heads turned. Chioma saw her first, and her face twisted with rage. "You? You dare show yourself now, cursed one?" "She probably poisoned him himself," another voice shouted. The crowd turned on her like a single beast. Their fear had found a target. "No," Adaze said, her voice steady despite the terror in her veins. "I saw the poison before he drank. I tried to warn." "Lies!" Chief Eze roared. "Guards, seize her!" 2 village men grabbed her arms. Adaze struggled, but they were stronger. "Wait!" Adaze screamed. "I know the antidote. I can save him." "The only thing you will save is your own neck from the rope," Chioma spat. The royal captain stepped forward, studying Adaze with cold eyes. For a moment, she thought he might listen. "She's lying to save herself," one of the healers said. "She knows nothing of medicine. She's just an abomination," Chioma finished. The captain turned away. They dragged Adaze to a small hut and locked her inside. She pounded on the door, screaming the truth, screaming the cure, screaming until her voice went raw. No one listened, and outside, the prince continued dying. But Adaze was not a girl who gave up easily. As night fell and the village descended into terrified prayer, she studied the walls of her prison, searching for weakness. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "The darkness is your friend, child. It hides you, it protects you, and when the time comes, it will set you free." The prince is dying, Adaze is locked away, but the night has only just begun, and some prisons are easier to escape than others. The moon rose full and bright, casting silver light through the cracks in Adaze's prison. She had stopped screaming, stopped pounding on the door, stopped begging them to listen. Instead, she listened to the sounds of the village dying around her. Women weeping, men arguing in harsh whispers, the healers chanting prayers that sounded more like funeral songs, and underneath it all, the awful silence from the hut where the prince lay barely breathing. Adaze closed her eyes and let her grandmother's teachings wash over her. The hut they'd locked her in was old, built before the current chief's time. The walls were wattle and daub, woven sticks covered with mud, strong when maintained, but this hut had been forgotten, neglected. Like her. She ran her hand along the wall until she found it, a section where the mud had cracked and crumbled. The sticks beneath were dry and brittle. Walking quietly, carefully, she began to pull them apart. It took an hour, maybe more. Her fingers bled, her muscles screamed, but finally, she'd created a gap large enough to slip through. Adaze emerged into the night like a ghost. The village was focused on the center square, where the prince's hut stood surrounded by torches and guards. Everyone's attention was there, which meant no one was watching the shadows.
and Adaeze knew shadows better than anyone. She moved silently through the darkness, keeping to the edges of the village. She needed plants, specific ones, and they didn't grow in the village. They grew in the forest where most villagers feared to go at night. But Adaeze had spent her childhood in that forest, hiding from cruelty, learning from her grandmother. The trees knew her, the paths welcomed her. She found the first plant quickly, bitter leaf, but not the common kind, the rare silver-backed variety that grew near water. She pulled several leaves carefully, whispering thanks to the plant spirit as her grandmother had taught her. The second was harder, devil's backbone, a twisted vine that grew only on the oldest trees. It was dangerous to harvest, full of thorns that could poison the harvester. But Adaeze knew the trick. Approach from downwind, move slowly, take only what you need. The third ingredient made her pause. Honey from the sacred grove's bees. The grove was forbidden. The village believed angry spirits lived there, that anyone who entered without proper ceremony would be cursed. But Adaeze was already cursed according to them. What was one more curse upon her head? She entered the grove with her heart in her throat. The ancient trees towered above her, their branches blocking out even the moonlight. In the darkness, she heard them, the bees, humming their ancient song. Her grandmother had brought her here once when she was very small. The bees know the difference between fear and respect. Show them respect and they will give you their gift. Adaeze approached the hive slowly, singing the old song her grandmother had taught her, a song in a language even older than Ukari village. A song that spoke of cooperation between humans and the small gods of the forest. The bees calmed. Their humming changed pitch, became almost welcoming. She took only what she needed, a small piece of honeycomb, and left an offering of flowers in return. By the time she returned to the village, the night had deepened. The guards around the prince's hut had multiplied. She could hear the captain's voice, sharp with barely controlled rage. He's fading. If he dies before dawn, start with the chief, then walk your way down. Adaeze's time was running out. She made her way to the back of the prince's hut, where no guards stood. They were all watching the front entrance, expecting danger to come from the visible paths. They never expected danger or salvation from the shadows. Using her knife, she carefully cut a small opening in the back wall. The wattle gave way easily, silently. She slipped inside. The prince lay on a reed mat, his chest barely rising. In the dim light of a single oil lamp, she could see the grey pallor of his skin, the white foam dried at the corners of his mouth. He was dying, minutes away maybe. Adaeze knelt beside him and began to walk. First, the bitter leaf. She chewed it into a paste, mixing it with her saliva, as her grandmother had taught her. Saliva activated the healing properties, made them stronger. She forced his mouth open and rubbed the paste on his gums, his tongue, the inside of his cheeks. Second, the devil's backbone. She crushed it and mixed it with water from her pouch, creating a dark liquid that smelled like earth and rain. She lifted his head and poured it slowly down his throat, massaging his neck to help him swallow. Third, the sacred honey. This she mixed with a powder made from ground baobab bark, the final ingredient which she always carried. She spread this mixture directly above his heart and began to press in rhythm, not too hard, not too soft, the way her grandmother had shown him on a dying bed once long ago. Breathe, she whispered to the prince. Breathe and fight. The darkness is trying to take you, but the darkness knows me, and I am telling it, not this one, not tonight. For long minutes, nothing happened. Her arms grew tired. Her hope began to flicker like the oil lamp beside her. Then the prince gasped, a real breath, deep and shuddering. His body convulsed once violently, and black liquid poured from his mouth, the poison purged from his system. Adaeze quickly turned him on his side, letting it flow out. More came, and more, until finally his breathing steadied. The grey faded from his skin, color returned to his lips. He was going to live. Adaeze sat back, exhausted, her whole body trembling. She had done it. Against everything,
Despite everything, she had saved him. Outside, she heard footsteps approaching. The guards were coming to check on their prince. She had seconds to escape. Adaeze slipped back through the hole she'd made, pulled a piece of cloth over it to hide the opening, and disappeared into the shadows, just as the door to the hut opened and light flooded. From her hiding place, she heard the guard's shocked cry. "Captain! Captain, come quickly! The prince, he's breathing! He's alive!" The prince lives, but morning is coming, and with it, the moment when Adaeze must decide. Will she stay silent, or will she finally make them see her?
Dawn broke over Ukari village like a resurrection. Prince Obi opened his eyes to find himself surrounded by people he didn't remember falling asleep among. His head pounded. His throat burned. His body felt like it had been trampled by elephants. But he was alive. "My prince, thank the gods." Chief Eze's face swam into view, painted with relief and something that looked almost like genuine tears. "We thought we'd lost you." "What happened?" Prince Obi's voice came out as a crook. "Poison, my lord. Someone tried to poison you during the celebration. The captain of his guard helped him sit up. But you survived. It's a miracle." "How?" The prince's eyes were sharp despite his weakness. "You said your healers didn't know the antidote." A moment of silence. Too long. "The gods intervened," Chief Eze said finally. "Our prayers were answered. The healers tried a new combination of herbs, and by the grace of the ancestors, it worked." Prince Obi's eyes narrowed. He was young, but he wasn't a fool. "Your healers had given up. I remember that much before I lost consciousness." "Not giving up, my lord. Just regrouping, consulting the spirits." Chief Eze's smile was slippery as palm oil. "What matters is that you're alive." Outside the hut, the village had gathered. Word had spread faster than fire. The prince lived, the village was saved, the crisis had passed. But among the celebrating crowd, one person stood apart. Adiaze watched from behind her grandmother's hut, her body aching from the night's work, her heart heavy with knowledge that no one else carried. She had saved him. She had risked everything to pull the prince back from death's door. And now they were lying, taking credit, pretending their prayers and incompetence had somehow worked a miracle. "Did you hear?" Chioma's voice carried across the compound. "Our healers saved the prince. Ukari village's medicine is powerful indeed." "The chief's wisdom in selecting our healers has been proven indeed. We are blessed in our leadership." Adiaze's hands clenched into fists. Every word was a knife, every lie a betrayal. But what could she do? Step forward and claim she saved the prince? They'd already tried to blame her for the poisoning itself. If she spoke now, they'd find a way to twist it, to turn her salvation into something dark and suspicious. A girl like her, cursed, dark, unwanted, didn't get to be a hero in stories like this. "We should investigate who poisoned the prince," one of the royal guards said, his voice cutting through the celebration. The village fell silent. Fear rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. "Of course," Chief Eze said quickly. "We will question everyone, find the traitor among us." "We already found her." Chioma stepped forward with false courage. "The cursed girl, Adiaze, she was here during the celebration. She even shouted something before the prince drank." Adiaze's blood turned to ice. "Where is this girl?" the captain demanded. "She tried to escape last night," Chief Eze lied smoothly. "We locked her up, but she broke free. She's probably hiding in the forest now, fleeing her crime." More lies, stacked on top of lies. The prince raised a hand, commanding silence. Despite his weakness, his authority was absolute. "I want to tell me about this girl," he said quietly. "She's nothing, my lord," Chief Eze waved dismissively. "Born cursed, dark as night itself, her own mother died bringing her into the world, probably from shame. The village has tolerated her out of kindness, but she's always been wrong." "Wrong how?" "Her darkness," Chioma supplied eagerly. "It's unnatural, a sign of evil. We've always known she would bring trouble." Prince Obi's expression was unreadable. "You judge a person evil by the color of their skin?" The village elders shifted uncomfortably. Chief Eze laughed nervously. "Not just that, my lord. Her behavior, always sneaking around, hiding in shadows, learning strange things from her grandmother, who was a bit touched in the head if truth be told. Strange things like medicine? The prince's voice was soft, but Adeaze had an edge in it. Witchcraft, more like, an elder muttered. And yet, the prince said, slowly, someone with knowledge of medicine saved my life last night. Someone who knew exactly which poison was used and exactly how to counter it. The village fell silent. You could hear the wind in the trees. My lord, Chifizi began, your healers were useless, the prince cut him off, his voice like iron. I was conscious enough to hear them admit they had no cure. I was dying and they knew it. He walked slowly to the door of the hut, his guards supporting him. Someone came in the night, someone who moved like a shadow, someone who saved my life with knowledge your healers didn't possess. He looked out at the gathered village, his eyes scanning the crowd. I want to know who. No one spoke, no one moved. Adeaze felt the moment pulling at her, demanding something she wasn't sure she could give. Courage. Her grandmother's voice whispered in her memory. Truth is a weapon they can't fight, child. When the time comes, speak it. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. If she stepped forward now, alone with the whole village against her, they would destroy her before the prince could hear the truth. She needed to wait, to watch, to let them dig their own graves with lies. We will find out who saved me, the prince said, a promise and a threat. I'm calling a gathering. 3 days from now, every person in this village will attend, and at that gathering, I will ask one simple question. Who saved my life? He looked directly at Chifizi, and someone will answer, because if they don't, I'll assume this entire village conspired to poison me and then lie about my recovery. The threat hung in the air like smoke. 3 days, the prince repeated. Prepare yourselves. 3 days passed like years. The village of Ukari had never been quieter. The celebration was gone. In its place was a suffocating tension that pressed down on everyone like a physical weight. Chifezie called secret meetings with the elders. Chioma and her friends spread new lies, trying to find someone else to blame. The healers practiced their stories, making sure every detail matched. And Adeaze waited. She spent those 3 days in her grandmother's hut, surrounded by her old woman's belongings. The dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, the clay pots full of medicines, the scrolls of bark paper covered in symbols that most of the village had forgotten how to read. Her grandmother had been teaching her since she was small, not just about plants and healing, but about something deeper, dignity. They can take many things from you, child, her grandmother had said once, her weathered hands holding Adeaze's small ones. They can take your comfort, your peace, your place in the village, but they cannot take your truth unless you give it to them. On the morning of the 3rd day, Adeaze bathed in the river before dawn. She washed with the black soap her grandmother had made, scrubbed her skin until it gleamed like polished ebony. She oiled her body with shea butter mixed with herbs that smelled like earth and rain. She wrapped herself in her grandmother's cloth, the one piece of beautiful fabric the old woman had owned, deep indigo blue, the color of midnight sky, with cowrie shells sewn along the border. When she looked at her reflection in the still water, she didn't see the cursed girl the village had named her. She saw Adeaze, daughter of the earth, keeper of ancient knowledge, a woman who had held death in her hands and commanded it to retreat. The sun rose, painting the sky in gold and crimson. The drums began to beat. The gathering was called. Every person in Ukari village made their way to the central square. The prince sat on a raised platform, recovered now, his eyes clear and sharp. His guards surrounded him. The royal scribe stood ready with his writing tools. This was not a celebration. This was a trial. Chifezie stood before the prince, his finest robes unable to hide the sweat on his brow. "My loyal village of Ukari," began Prince Obi, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. 3 nights ago, someone tried to kill me, and that same night, someone saved me. He paused, letting the words sink in. I was poisoned with king cobra plant mixed with bitter root, a combination that your healers admitted they couldn't cure. I was dying. Your healers gave up, your elders prayed, but prayers alone don't reverse poison. Chifeze opened his mouth, but the prince silenced him with a look. Then in the night, someone came to me. Someone who knew exactly what poison was used and exactly how to counter it. Someone who worked in secret, in shadow, and then disappeared. He stood, commanding every eye in the gathering. I ask you now, before these witnesses, before the gods themselves, who saved my life? The silence was deafening. Chifeze stepped forward, his prepared speech ready on his tongue. My lord, it was our combined efforts, the healers, the prayers of the people, the wisdom of the elders. No. The single word from the prince cut like a blade. Someone entered my hut through a hole cut in the back wall. Someone who moved like a ghost. Someone who forced medicine into my mouth, purged the poison from my body, and saved my life while all of you stood outside useless. He looked at Chifeze with eyes like flint. Was it you? My lord, I organized the healing efforts. Was it you who entered my hut in the night? No, but then sit down and be silent. Chifeze stumbled backward, his face red with humiliation. The prince's eyes swept across the gathered villagers. Someone in this village knows the truth, and they will speak, or everyone will suffer the consequences of this deception. The moment stretched, thin as a spider's web. And then Adaeze stepped forward. She walked through the crowd, and people moved away from her like she carried fire in her hands. Their faces showed shock, fear, disgust, all the familiar expressions she'd seen her whole life. But for the first time, she didn't lower her eyes. She walked with her head high, her grandmother's cloth flowing behind her like royal robes, her dark skin gleaming in the morning sun. She walked until she stood before the prince, and then she knelt, not in submission, but in respect. I saved your life, my lord, she said, her voice clear and steady. The crowd exploded in protest. Lies. The cursed one seeks attention. She probably poisoned him first. Prince Obi raised his hand and silence fell again. Tell me everything, he commanded. So, Adaeze told the truth. She told about seeing the poison on the calabash before he drank. She told about trying to warn them, about being ignored. She told about being locked up, blamed, accused. She told about escaping in the night, gathering the plants, entering his hut through the back wall. She described every step of the cure, every ingredient, every action. And as she spoke, the prince's face grew darker. You, he pointed at the head healer, is what she describes accurate? The old man hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, my lord, that combination, it would work. I didn't know it, but it would work. And you, the prince turned to his captain, examine the back wall of the hut where I slept. The captain returned moments later, holding a piece of cloth. There's a hole, my lord, recently cut. This was covering it. Prince Obi turned back to Adaeze. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because, my lord, Adaeze said quietly, in this village, a girl who looks like me is never believed. Even now, they think I'm lying. She is, Chioma shouted. She probably learned those details from someone else. Silence! The prince's roar shook the very ground. He stood and walked down from his platform, coming to stand directly before Adaeze. Look at me, he commanded. She raised her eyes to his. Tell me why you saved me. When this village has treated you with such cruelty, why risk your life to save mine? Adaeze took a breath. This was the moment, the truth that mattered more than all the others. Because my conscience would not allow me to watch a man die when I had the power to save him. Not because you are a prince, not because this village deserved it,
but because letting you die would have made me as dark inside as they claim I am outside. She stood, facing him eye to eye. I saved you because I choose who I am, and I choose to be someone who values life, even when life hasn't valued me. The prince stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to face the village. This woman you called cursed, this woman you mocked and rejected and blamed, this woman saved your prince's life. While you prayed and panicked and lied, she acted. His voice grew colder. And then, you tried to take credit for her work. You lied to your prince. You attempted to claim rewards for deeds you didn't do. He pointed at Chief Eze. You are removed from your position, effective immediately. You are no longer chief of this village. My lord, Chief Eze fell to his knees. Please, You are a coward and a liar. Your position is forfeit. The prince turned to the elders. You all knew she was locked up falsely. You all participated in the lies. For this, you will pay reparations to this woman from your own wealth. He faced Chioma and the other women who had tormented Adieze. You called her cursed. You called her darkness. But she has proven to have more light in her than all of you combined. Finally, he turned back to Adieze. You saved my life. Custom demands I reward you. Name what you wish, and if it's within my power, it's yours. The village held its breath. Everyone knew what a royal reward could mean. Wealth, position, marriage even. Adieze looked at the prince. Then she looked at the village, at Chief Eze kneeling in the dirt, at Chioma's shocked face, at all the people who had made her life a living nightmare. She could ask for anything. She could destroy them all. Instead, she spoke the words that had been forming in her heart. I want nothing from you, my lord. I didn't save you for a reward. She turned to face the village, her voice carrying to every corner of the square. I want you all to remember this day. Remember that the girl you called cursed, the girl you called darkness, the girl you treated as less than human, she saved you all from the prince's justice. Not because you deserved it, but because she chose to. She looked at Chioma. You said my darkness would curse you, but it saved you. She looked at Chief Eze. You said I was nothing, but your nothing was worth more than all your somethings combined. She looked at the elders, the healers, the villagers who made every day of her life painful. I'm leaving Ukari village. I'm taking my grandmother's knowledge and my dignity, and I'm walking away from you. Not because you are driving me out, but because I choose to go. She turned back to the prince. If you wish to reward me, my lord, I ask only this. Let the story of what happened here be told truthfully. Let it be known that beauty and worth aren't found in the color of skin, but in the content of character. The prince nodded slowly, a smile touching his lips. You are wiser than many twice your age. It will be done. Adieze bowed one final time, then turned and walked away. She walked through the silent crowd, past the people who had tormented her, past the hut where she'd grown up alone, past the river where she'd been pushed and mocked. She walked until she reached the edge of the village where the forest began. There, she stopped and looked back one last time. The village of Ukari sat in the morning sun, smaller than it had ever seemed before. The people looked like what they were, frightened, ashamed, exposed in their cruelty. She had won, not by destroying them, but by rising above them. Adieze turned towards the forest, towards the unknown future ahead, and smiled. She was free. If this story moved you, if you felt Adieze's pain and celebrated her triumph, then share it. Let it reach someone who needs to know that their worth isn't determined by those who refuse to see it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us of our power, our dignity, and our unshakable worth. Remember, they laughed at her darkness until she showed them what true light looks like.